Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Commission's press room for our college readout of today, Wednesday, 26th of February. I am joined by the Executive Vice President Dombrovskis, who will do the college readout, and by Commissioners Gentiloni and Schmit, who will present you, together with the Executive Vice President, the European semester package. We will start with the college readout. Executive Vice President, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. So the college meeting has just ended, and we are here to talk about European semester winter package. But before going there, let me outline some other points we discussed today. So let me start by briefly informing you about our discussion on coronavirus COVID-19. Our thoughts are with those affected and the human cost of this epidemics, so we are doing all we can to help contain the spread of this virus. So we discussed the state of play regarding the number of infections in European Union, the measures taken so far to support member states in tackling it. We further discussed the coordination with member states on measures taken to contain the spread of the virus, and about the guidance issued to the staff of the European Commission in relation to travelling to the areas affected by the spread of the virus. And we also discussed possible economic impact on the spread of the virus on the world economy, on the EU economy, and possible sectors affected. Then President von der Leyen also informed the College on the appointment of Maroš Šefčovič, Vice President of the Commission, as the EU's representative and co-chair of the joint committee established by the UK withdrawal agreement. The joint committee is made up of the representatives of both EU and the UK, and is overseeing the implementation and application of the withdrawal agreement. So now let me move to the European semester. I will run you through the key findings coming out of the country analysis. Economic and financial stability remains an important precondition for sustainable growth and job creation. It is therefore worrying that high levels of debt continue to persist in some countries. We need more differentiated fiscal policies to reduce those divergences. Member states are still struggling to get back on their pre-crisis public investment levels. At the same time, other types of government expenditure are now higher than before the crisis. There is therefore need to improve the quality of public finances. Europe's financial sector is clearly in better shape than a few years ago, with higher capital and lower level of non-performing loans, but there are still pockets of weakness. Productivity growth remains a challenge in Europe. We need to remove investment barriers and step up investment in new technologies. A stronger performance on research and innovation, as well as excellent education and skills, are crucial to increase productivity and to adapt also to climate and digital transformations. The country reports also address social developments and challenges in member states. Inclusive growth and reduction of income inequalities remain a focal point of our analysis. Nicolas will say more on this. Let me now say a few words on macroeconomic imbalances procedure. 3 countries are now in excessive imbalances procedure, and 10 are experiencing imbalances. Paolo will give you a full overview. I would like to highlight one positive development. The imbalances in Bulgaria have been corrected. Bulgaria has made important progress in strengthening financial sector governance. Corporate debt has fallen, and non-performing loans ratio has declined. This shows that a sustained commitment to sound policies and reforms brings good results. There are also, unfortunately, less good news. In Romania, the deficit was about 3% of GDP in 2019 and is expected to stay above 3% both this year and next. This reflects a long-standing build-up of fiscal imbalances as a result of pro-cyclical, strongly expansionary fiscal policy since 2016. This is why we adopted a report on 14th of February, concluding that the opening of excessive deficit procedure is warranted. Member States in the Economic and Financial Committee have just provided their opinion, confirming the Commission's assessment. The Commission therefore intends to come up with a proposal to open the excessive deficit procedure next week. Finally, today we also have adopted a fifth report under enhanced surveillance for Greece. We'll present this report at the next Eurogroup. Greece has progressed well in implementing its reform commitments. We expect the supplementary measures that the government has pledged to implement to bear fruit in time for a sixth report in May. Based on the progress by then, Member States may, in a June Eurogroup, discuss the possible use of ANFA and SMP proceeds to reduce financing needs or to finance investment. We encourage Greek authorities to keep up with reforms, especially in the financial sector, where significant further action is needed. Ladies and gentlemen, this time around we also have added 3 innovations in our assessment of Member States' performance and policies. We have brought the semester more closely in step with the Green Deal, and you will see that our analysis reflects our ambition on sustainable growth strategy. First, we have introduced a detailed analysis of environmental sustainability, focusing on economy and employment. The clear conclusion is that significant and targeted investment, as well as deep economic reforms, will be needed to achieve the green transition. As I stressed already when presenting the annual sustainable growth strategy in December, the transition will have an impact on everybody, but not all population groups and regions have the same capacity to respond. That's why we have proposed the Just Transition Fund. Therefore, as a second innovation, today's country reports include an analysis of transition challenges in each country and present our services' preliminary views on how and where the fund could provide support. This is meant to be useful first input for Member States when preparing their territorial just transition plans. In early March, Member States will be invited to send their requests for technical support to the Commission. We will fully support national efforts directed at ensuring a just transition towards climate neutrality. The third new element is that we have integrated the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into the semester as part of our efforts to put sustainable development at the heart of economic policy. Paolo will explain you in more detail, so I will stop here and give floor to Paolo. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Valdis, and good morning. In fact, I think that we are delivering a new message with our semester package. We could say that we are greening the European semester and having the Sustainable Development Goals as a new pillar. The Sustainable Development Goals are now specifically addressed in country reports, and each country report has a new annex assessing progress on the Sustainable Development Goals in the last 5 years. And overall, I would note that referring to these recent 5 years, we need to strengthen result, especially on Sustainable Development Goal 13, which is climate action, and is so crucial for our strategy, and it is not among the SDG where the analysis that we had in these months is showing more progress. I have to say very clearly that this is a first step of a new strategic approach. We have also added a new section, as Valdis said, on environmental sustainability to complement our existing analysis on macroeconomic and social issues. First step means that we will progressively be adding further elements in the next semester cycles. In particular, we are developing with Eurostat a set of indicators to better capture the macroeconomic and social impact of the green transition. And this will be ready for next year. At the same time, we are presenting in this semester the analysis and scenarios connected to the Just Transition Fund and the use of these funds country by country. Of course, the semester retains its focus on economic, employment and social issues. We don't have to see this as a contradiction, because at the end of the day, contributing to address the climate change is contributing to address our main risk from an economic and social point of view. So they are not two separate tasks that we have. On the macroeconomic imbalances procedures, let me add to what Valdis said just a few details. We had an in-depth review, especially for the 13 member states that are in this process. We took a decision, a positive decision on Bulgaria, as was said. We propose to maintain 3 countries on excessive imbalances. It's Greece, Cyprus and Italy, while 9 member states still have imbalances. It's Germany, France, the Netherlands, Ireland, Romania, Croatia, Sweden, Portugal and Spain. There is a stability in this classification, apart from Bulgaria, and this reflects the fact that we had progress, but imbalances are the legacy in several cases of the time of crisis. And, for example, high private and public debt levels take time to correct, but need to be corrected. We also observe an asymmetric rebalancing on the current account positions. I mean, large current account deficits have been overall corrected and large surpluses persist. Lastly, you will see that the rule of law issue is again addressed in the reports for Poland and Hungary, obviously focusing here on the impact that this concern can have on the investment climate. Let me conclude with a word on the coronavirus outbreak. As Valdis said, this was discussed this morning in the college. You know that the situation is evolving by the day, and the European Commission is in contact with member states, with the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, with the World Health Organization, and this morning these two organizations and our Commissioner Kyriakides will have a press point in Rome to state the situation. As regards implication for the economic outlook, I updated the College on the subject, but when we presented our winter forecasts 2 weeks ago, I said that the coronavirus represented a new downside risk, but it was too soon to qualify its impact. That remains true, even if the developments of recent days point to a partial materialization of that downside risk. So we will have an impact, knowing the fact that China accounts 18% of global GDP, and it was 4% of global GDP at the time of the SARS outbreak, but an assessment and a forecast, a serious forecast, is not yet possible. So it is a rapid evolving situation which we will continue to monitor very closely. Thank you. Now, Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paolo. Good morning. Well, I want to start on a positive note. Employment continues to be at a record high in Europe. However, we have to be aware that labour markets are affected by the changes in our economies. Some member states are still facing major difficulties like high youth unemployment, long-term unemployment, mismatches between offers and demands of jobs, but also a high level of atypical work forms leading to job precariousness. Therefore, one of the major answers to these problems are investing in skills. It's a key issue, and therefore we will address this issue by presenting next month a new skills agenda. We have to go on strengthening the social dimension of the European semester and fully implement the European Pillar of Social Rights. That is our strategy to ensure fair and sustainable transitions by investing precisely in skills, by fair working conditions, by decent wages and adequate social protection for all. Despite on wages, one remark, despite moderate wage growth during the last years, the situation of low-wage workers has not really improved. Wage and income inequalities have not decreased, and therefore the rising inequality remains a major issue, socially but also economically. And I can say that our economy is not yet working for all the people as it should. One example is poverty and exclusion. Even if it has slightly declined, children at risk of poverty, the number of children at risk of poverty remains quite high. It is absolutely essential that we reverse the trend of increasing in-work poverty. Work should always pay and allow a decent life. This is also an aspect of sustainability. And it is exactly this aim we pursue through the establishment of a European framework for minimum wages and through the promotion of collective bargaining. Social dialogue and collective bargaining play a key role with a view to just transitions and reforms. Investment in education, skills and vocational training is crucial to adapt to climate and digital transitions. It is also a path out of poverty, and it is an investment in a stronger, innovative and more productive economy, an opportunity for all. One remark on the tax system. I think we have to reform our tax systems by shifting tax burden from labour to other resources, which could also boost economic growth. A final remark on the 2020 employment guidelines. Today we present an update of the employment guidelines. This update reflects better our general objectives, which have been laid out by Vice President Dombrovskis and Commissioner Gentiloni, our general objectives in the annual Sustainable Growth Strategy, as well as the challenges we have to face on the labour markets. The main changes focus on, first, the objective of achieving a sustainable social market economy in line with the European Pillar of Social Rights, and upskilling to respond to the digital and green transitions and the need to ensure that these are fair and just, particularly in relation to job opportunities and job changes. New elements on fair, transparent and predictable working conditions and improvement of labour conditions of platform workers we have to deal with. Finally, gender equality, pay gaps and pay transparency, as well as employment rates of women are identified as priorities which will be reflected in the gender strategy. We have to devote a stronger attention to lower and middle income groups when it comes to wages for a decent standard of living. Therefore, the importance of a framework for minimum wages. And finally, a stronger emphasis on health and long-term care as a necessary condition for facing the different aspects of an ageing population. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the three members of the college. We are now opening the floor for questions. I will invite you, like always, to focus your questions on matters that were discussed by the college today, like we usually do during college readouts. For any other questions, all the spokespeople will be available to provide on the records answers. Mehreen, you were first.
Hi, Mehreen Khan from the Financial Times. I have two questions. Firstly, for Commissioner Gentiloni, I'm wondering how you want to give teeth to the SDGs and to the new greening credentials in the semester. Can you foresee a possibility where the SDGs or your green metrics are actually used as possible basis for opening sanctions or excessive deficit-like procedures against member states who clearly will not be abiding by them or are falling behind? So how do you really give force to this idea that we're going to start doing green budgeting? And on the coronavirus, given that there is a lot of uncertainty and it's very fast-moving, does the Commission have any plans to maybe release an emergency economic forecast or to do some immediate number crunching so there is a clearer sense of the economic impact as you see it?
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
It works.
Okay. Well, teeth, yes. Teeth need a certain time to grow, and I think, in fact, we introduced this new pillar. We already had on this a dialogue with member states. We will have a next step in country-specific recommendation, which is already some sort of teeth on our side. It is not the same mechanism that we have on Stability and Growth Pact with very clear procedures, but it is a mechanism that could trigger our procedures on evaluation on economies, for example, on evaluation on imbalances. What I want to stress is that this is a process, and also we ourselves need in this process to fine-tune our capacity with member states to identify figures fresh data for this scope. So the answer is yes, we will have teeth, but gradually and not comparable with teeth that we have on other issues. On the forecast of the evolution of coronavirus, I think that rightly so, all global institutions are very cautious in forecasting. Just to give you an example, I was in the G20 in Saudi Arabia where the IMF delivered its revised down baseline scenario for the Chinese growth, as you know, lowering it of 0.4%, and considering this having an impact of 0.1% on global growth. But this is, of course, far from certain at this moment. The only certainty we have is that we will have an economic impact, and I will only add that in this G20 meeting I've seen concern around the table, especially for Asian economies, but not only Asian economies. Just to give you an example, the Minister of Finance of Singapore announced the fact that his own country delivered a stimulus package of 4 billion, and it was during the SARS outbreak. They had delivered a package of stimulus of 300 million. So 300 million at the time, 4 billion this time. This shows a certain amount of concern, but quantifying with a forecast is not something that we are doing now. We are following day by day with our services the evolution and in contact with all the economic institutions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Next question, the colleague in the middle.
Bulgarian Public Television, this is Slava Apostolova. A question to Vice President Dombrovskis. Mr. Dombrovskis, you mentioned Bulgaria as a very good example. How do you explain then, obviously Bulgaria is performing well economically, how do you explain the distrust and the lack of consensus in the society with regards to the euro and accession to the ERM too? Thank you.
Okay, let me start with a formal point, because formally those two processes are not linked. In a sense, our classification in macroeconomic imbalances procedure is not directly linked with ERM2. Well, there may well be the case that Bulgaria implementing its pre-accession commitments concerning ERM2, that it also facilitated the reduction of economic imbalances. But in any case, what matters for joining ERM2 is implementation of pre-commitments Bulgaria has taken in July 2018. There, I can say, as concerns pre-commitments monitored by European Commission, things are broadly on track. Probably important element still to be dealt with is recapitalization of banking sector of certain banks, but this is a pre-commitment which is being monitored by the ECB. Then on so to say support for the euro. What we are seeing recently, indeed, there are many speculations about possible impacts on joining the ERM2, joining the euro. We had been facing similar speculations also in previous cases when countries were joining. I'm aware there are lots of speculations on the exchange rate, even though there's no economic reason to ask for another exchange rate than a current currency peg rate, because it has been functioning successfully in Bulgaria already for decades. There are speculations on possible impact on inflation, even though effect on inflation has been very contained in the countries which were the last ones to join the Eurozone. So I think it's important in the case to come with a clear information dispelling those kind of myths. And what we are seeing, interestingly, consistently, is that the public support for euro in Eurozone countries is much higher than in countries outside Eurozone. It means that actually people are appreciating euro once they're having it.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Morning, Gallavotti, Edian Kronos, Italy. I'm going to ask my question in Italian, as I see that the translation is provided. It's for Commissioner Gentiloni. Per il Commissario volevo solo chiederle, sempre sull'epidemia di Covid-19 che ha colpito l'Italia, in particolare le regioni più ricche e diciamo più importanti a livello produttivo del Paese. Il sottosegretario Mario Turco ha già chiesto flessibilità nei conti pubblici per poter affrontare senza troppe difficoltà questa emergenza. Non le chiedo una risposta immediata, volevo solo capire se secondo lei questa richiesta troverà orecchie attente da parte della Commissione. Grazie.
I will answer in Italian. Prima di tutto, naturalmente, la Commissione, e io in modo particolare, esprime vicinanza alle famiglie delle vittime, perché abbiamo avuto delle vittime anche di questo coronavirus, e vicinanza alle popolazioni che devono fare i conti con restrizioni e misure di contenimento e di prevenzione. Aggiungerei anche che la Commissione lavora per il massimo di cooperazione, di contributo. Non a caso la collega Stella Kyriakides è da ieri in Italia. Per quanto riguarda le questioni legate alle politiche di bilancio, credo che la risposta sia molto semplice. Nel nostro attuale patto di stabilità e di crescita sono previste delle clausole di flessibilità legate alle cosiddette circostanze eccezionali e quindi sarà oggetto di discussione nei prossimi mesi con quali paesi e in quali condizioni queste circostanze eccezionali potranno essere utilizzate. Senza dubbio, voi sapete, sono state utilizzate per esempio in occasione del terremoto in Italia, quindi direi che una risposta c'è già nelle nostre regole.
Thank you very much. Next question, yes, in the middle.
Hi, back there on the horizon. Oliver Grimm with the Austrian newspaper Die Presse. I have to follow up on Mechlin's question about your economic outlook. We've just had Lufthansa announce that they're basically not hiring anyone for the time being, and they urge their employees to use up any holidays they might have. Last week, bond issuing in the Eurozone, in Europe, basically almost came to a standstill. More and more companies are announcing contingency plans and so forth to cut down work hours and so forth, prepare for the economic impact of the economy now freezing up. So once again, the question: do you still stand by your assessment from 2 weeks ago in your winter forecast that Europe is going to continue this year with moderate but steady growth? Or wouldn't it be more important to actually face the situation as it is and prepare for a recession that could come pretty soon? And can you give us an idea of the debate today about possible stimulus plans? Commissioner Gentiloni thankfully gave us the example of Singapore. Singapore is doing 10 times, 11 times more than they did during SARS. What does the EU need to do in order to prepare? Thank you.
Well, maybe, to come back to this question. First of all, as Paolo already outlined, indeed, we are seeing that there is an effect on the economy. We see it in different sectors. We see a reduction in air travel. We see a reduction in tourism. We see effects in different sectors in industry. Both because of falling demand, first and foremost in China, but also because of the disruption of supply chains. So clearly this economic effect is there, and we are closely monitoring this economic effect. As regards the update of the economic forecast, we'll be coming with an update of economic forecast in line with the spring economic cycle. That's also the next stage in European semester where we can possibly take fiscal decisions and where we can house those discussions in a context of stability programs and convergence programs presented by member states where they outline their future fiscal plans. But at the same time, as also Paolo already outlined, there is still very large uncertainty. So it's difficult to quantify because we don't know how this epidemics will spread. And from there, of course, it may lead to different economic scenarios. It's something to be monitored closely. And we're going to come with a new spring economic forecast when we'll have more data, more clear picture when things are evolving, and that will be also occasion to discuss, among other things, possible fiscal response.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions? Yes, please go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Maria Psara with Euronews. 2 questions on Greece, if I may. First one, the report shows progress in Greece, and you, Vice President, already said that on June at the Eurogroup you will start the discussion about the change of the use of the S&Ps and ANFAs. What about the discussion of the reduction of the primary surplus? This is the first question, and the second is about the inequalities in Greece and what Greece should do about that, because as I understand, you are really concerned on that. Thank you.
Yeah. First, as regards our fifth enhanced surveillance report, indeed, as we already outlined, we had seen a good progress in reform implementation. Greece has consistently overperformed on its fiscal targets over the recent years and is on track to meet also this year fiscal target. And this positive performance indeed gives scope for discussing what are possible measures to stimulate investment and a possibility to use S&P profits, not, for example, of reducing financing needs, i.e. reducing the debt in the country, but to use it as additional investment. So in this sense, those 2 issues are linked, whether you count S&P and ANFA profits within or outside the primary surplus targets. But at the end of the day, it's something which the Eurozone member states, the creditors of Greece, have to decide. From Commission side, we are willing to support this discussion because we see that there is a good progress in Greece, not only macroeconomically, but also as regards financing costs, because interest rates on Greek bonds have now reached record low levels. On income inequality, indeed, as you know, the social dimension was very strong also when we had been discussing performance of Greek economy before. We had been putting a strong emphasis, for example, on the introduction of guaranteed minimum income benefit schemes. So we are certainly assessing and discussing with Greek authorities what further steps can be done also in context of reduction of income inequality.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Estonian Public Broadcasting, Eppehand. I have a question concerning Estonia. Money laundering have been quite a big issue in Estonia, and Estonia has made quite many things to improve situation, but you are still quite critical. Why? And another question, you are worried about the changes in our pension system. Why are you worried? Thank you very much.
As regards situation in Estonia, I would say our country report is broadly positive. Estonia is not experiencing macroeconomic imbalances. Economic growth has been strong across different sectors in economy. There are certainly some challenges still to be addressed. Skills shortages and mismatches still persist and limit productivity gain. Challenges remain regarding the social safety net, especially access to social services. So there are certain areas where more work is needed. As regards Estonian banking sector is sound overall, but indeed money laundering risk remain, and capacity of the financial supervisor needs to be strengthened. That's why our assessment on Estonia's implementation of country-specific recommendations, specifically on the recommendation concerning ensuring effective supervision and the enforcement of the anti-money laundering framework, our assessment that Estonia has made only limited progress, so more work is needed.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any other questions, which I don't see, well, I would like to thank the Executive Vice President and the two Commissioners, and I wish you a good day.